Good morning, guys. It is like storming here, hardcore raining, lightning, and thunder. And so when you hear that in the background, just think nothing of it. I really just wanted to get this video done because I have been putting it off for like 2 weeks. So my apologies and thank you for coming back. Um, so today I want to continue talking about those foundational truths that I had mentioned last time, just learning who God is. I think it's so important that we understand the core characteristics of God because they're so telling of his heart. And so last week we talked about how he loves us, like so completely loves us. And this week I want to talk about the fact that like out of that love comes a willingness to pursue us. And that has been such an instrumental truth in my life. And it just so drew me to God, knowing that in all of my rebellion and lack of understanding and just ignorance, it didn't put him off. It didn't give him that, like, she made her bed, lie in it mentality. Like, it just made him want to protect me and help me. And it sent him out looking for me and pursuing me when I didn't even, like, I wasn't interested. But that love, it kept him coming back. And so I want to talk about that today. And I want to start by looking in the Bible because the Bible is chock full of times where God has done just this. He's pursued someone who, by human standards, right, they really had made their bed. And if God were human, he would say, now lie in it. And nobody would question it. It would be righteous and right in our eyes. And yet God does something different. And I think that's such an important truth for us to understand. And so I'm going to be talking out of Luke today. And the story's also in Matthew. And I can't think off the top of my head, but I'm guessing that it's in Mark as well. And it's about the demon-possessed man. And so before we get into that, I want to back up the story just a little bit because before it talks about the demon-possessed man, Jesus tells a parable. And the parable is of the 99 sheep and the one lost one. And he talks about the fact that, he would put the 99 into the fold and then he would leave that fold and he would go out and search for the one that was lost. And when you think about that story, you have to take it back to the actual time frame that they're talking about. And so back then, they're in the Middle East, and they would put the sheep in the fold at night, which means that when Jesus says, and I go back out, he's going back out at night into the mountains, into this treacherous terrain where like there's drop-offs, there's ravines, there's wild animals, the temperature drops drastically at night, and yet there he goes searching for the one. And this always blows my mind because, well, I'm not a shepherd, and I don't really know that much about sheep, but if I had 100 and I came back with 99, I'm like, that's success. And he's like, that's not success at all to me. Like, I care just as much about the one as I do about the 99. And so he goes back out and he looks for that one, and it doesn't matter why that one left. Like, it doesn't matter whether it just got distracted and lost track of time and didn't come back to the fold when it was cold, or, whether it just said, well, I don't wanna, and went another way. Like, he doesn't ask any of those questions. He says, it's mine and I'm responsible for it and I'm going to go after it. And that's exactly what he does. And so he tells this parable, and then he tells his disciples, hey, let's get in the boat and we're going to go to the other side of the sea. And there's a great story in the midst of that as well as to what happens on their way. But the idea is that he left one side and he went to the other, and that is a really important part because you have to understand back then what he left was his people and his home and where he was accepted and what was considered right and holy, maybe is the right word. His people were the Jewish community, and so like to be in that, there was just an acceptance. And they had kind of like a holier than thou mentality. When you look out into the rest of the world, the Gentiles, they didn't associate with them, and if you did, you were like you were considered dirty. And if you were coming into contact with those people, and you would have to go back and be clean even to come back among your people into the temple. And so this is what Jesus left. He left the acceptable, and he went to a place that wasn't acceptable. Like, it was the Jewish community, and we know this because it talks about the fact that they raised pigs, which is a big no-no if you're a Jew. So it wasn't his people that he was going to, but he left his people to go over there to a land that wasn't his people, where he wouldn't be accepted, and by doing so wouldn't be accepted by his people when he came back, because of the association. And so that's the situation that Jesus puts himself in, just to go over there. And it says when he got to the other side, he was immediately met by a man with unclean spirits. And this isn't like a guy that is just a little off or weird. He's like full-blown demonic. The kind of person that would send me into the corner singing Jesus loves me because I'm scared out of my mind. That's who Jesus is facing. And it says that this guy ran to Jesus, and Jesus starts addressing the demons when he starts talking, and he says, "What's your name?" And the demons respond, "Legion." Now, legion is more like a military term, and depending on, I read different commentaries, it's more than 5,000, could be as much as like a little over 6,000. And so what these demons are saying is there's 5,000 to 6,000 of us in here, and we're in control. And when you start looking at the description of this man, you realize the havoc that they have just wrought in his life. So it's not like it's just a little inconvenience. This guy used to be part of his village, and now he's no longer. It says he's in the tombs, naked, up day and night, being tortured, cutting himself, crying and moaning. That's his reality. That's his existence. And it wasn't always this way. At some point, like I said, he was in the village. He was part of the people. And then he somehow let Satan in. Maybe it was a conscious choice. Maybe it was just a bad mistake. But something opened the door, and it allowed the demons to start coming in. And once they started in, they didn't stop. It was just like one after the other after the other. And the townspeople noticed, he probably went from an okay guy to he's a little weird, to he's a problem, to he's dangerous, because we see where, at some point they were like, we've got to confine him. So they put him in chains and shackles, but he had super natural strength because he was demon possessed, and it says that he would break them, and they were no longer able to control him, so they wanted nothing to do with him. So they sent him out, and again, he found his place in the tombs. That was his reality. He no longer associated with the living, but he was he associated with the dead. And that's kind of symbolic of where his heart was. Like, he was just a shell of himself. He was so tortured by these guys, these demons. And so we see, this naked guy with just no hope, right? Unable to care for himself, unable to be part of society anymore, and completely under the control of these demons. And I think the next part of the story is so amazing, because it says when he saw Jesus, he ran to him. And this is what it means. It means that 5,000 to 6,000 demons could not stop him from running to Jesus, because believe me, they tried. But they could not. The power of God is so strong. He's so strong, and he's so in authority that what the man couldn't do, in his own strength, Christ was able to do with one look. That's all it took. One look to give him the strength to run and to find himself at the feet of Jesus. And this leaves the demons in a really, really precarious situation because they know who Jesus is. And I always, it makes me laugh because Satan never wants you to know Jesus. He goes to such extreme lengths to make sure that we don't think it's God. The good things, when God intervenes, all the things that he does, Satan doesn't want you to know that's God. And we see down through history, where he used to say, hey, God's a liar. That's where he started. God's a liar. And then it was he's not the only God. That's kind of where Satan progressed as you read through the Bible. And then we know today the lie is there is no God. And yet here you see when these demons come face to face with Jesus, who is God, they cannot help but announce it. What have you to do with us? Son of the Most High God. That's how they address him. And so for all to hear, they can't help but say, you are God. And here's the reason why. Jesus commands their faith. They know he is the one who will judge them in the end. It's very, very clear in the Bible. And so they're so worried that in this moment, Jesus is there to judge them. And they're not ready. They know their fate. They're resigned to it. They've chosen it, but they still don't want to face it. And yet now here they are face to face with the one who can judge them, who can send them right into eternal death. And they say, please don't. Swear on it that that's not what you're here for. And so you see this whole dialogue with them where they're negotiating with Jesus because they don't really want to face them. And he's you have to come out. And they're well, I don't want to come out to you. So can we go into the pigs? And so he allows them to go into the pigs, which, then they send the pigs spiraling off the cliff and kill them all. But it puts some distance between them and Jesus, and it makes them feel better. And it leaves the whole town in an uproar for a couple of reasons. First off, there's this guy that they could not control, right? Who's now, when they're told of everything that happens and they come, they find him, the Bible says, seated next to Jesus, clothed and in his right mind. And where it should have sparked just wonder and awe, it sparked fear. Because they're we know this guy. We tried to control him, and it was impossible. By human standards, cannot be done. And yet now here sits this guy who was able to do what we couldn't. And they recognize, if it was scary having the demons around, this is way scarier because he can control the demons. And so there's fear because they know what they lack. And then there's fear because they've seen that, that it's created quite a predicament for them because the pigs are their livelihood and they're now all drowned in the sea. And so they're just please leave, please leave. So here's Jesus, right? He's came over on the boat. He's only made it to the shoreline, and he's done one thing. He's healed one person. And now he's going to get back into his boat, and he's going to go back over to the other side, right? Having done one thing. But that one thing was so instrumental because what a difference it made in one guy's life, right? He went from absolutely out of control, living with the dead, and really just being dead, to full of life, clothed and in his right mind. And he begs Jesus, please take me with you when you leave. He just wants to spend the rest of his life in proximity to Christ, in the one who set him free. He wants to worship and he wants to praise and he just wants to be part of Jesus. And Jesus tells him, no, stay. And don't just stay, but stay and tell everybody what I've done for you. And that's exactly what the guy does. He goes from town to town in his area, and he tells everybody, and everybody knows who he is, right? They're like, it doesn't give us his name, but say Joe, right? Oh, there's Joe. He was crazy. He was scary. And now he's so articulate, and he's got it all together. What's the difference? And there was this draw and understanding that, something had changed, and he was able to say that something is Jesus over and over again. And it tells, if you go further into scripture, that it says Jesus went back to that village at some point, and the people were so ready for him. They were so excited to hear his message and for him to come in and do healing for them for what he had done for this guy. And they were able to have that freedom and that truth because one guy had been changed and he stayed behind to tell the rest. And again, I love that story because it shows what God said in the parable, that he'll go search for the one. You see that. He went and searched for the one. He really only made it to the shoreline, and he really only helped one person. But he was willing to do it. And we see that one person was able to change multitudes of people. And it's the same today. I know in my own life, again, I think I mentioned last time, I went through a season of rebellion. I went through a season of just thinking, man, if this is what God is, I want nothing to do with him. And it was wrong expectations on my part, a wrong understanding of God. But that was my reality. I wanted to do what I wanted to do. And I felt like, if I followed God, all I could do was fail because I was living works-based, which is, it's useless to try because you can't. On my best day, I can make the worst mistakes and just, fail in the most craziest of ways. But that's my reality. And I recognized that about myself, right? I knew that I couldn't, but I wasn't able to make the connection that God could. The difference is God in you. And so it sent me in a spiral. It sent me on a road of rebellion. And it was after Owen was born that God really started pursuing me. He had been pursuing me all along, but I had been putting him off. But it was after Owen was born, I just felt like God was saying it's time, Sarah. And in my heart, I was operating still out of fear because I was I have 3 kids and I'm responsible for them. I'm responsible for showing them God and I don't know God and I don't have a good relationship with him. And so it started me back into church and seeking after him. And except for I was still working in the wrong expectations and the wrong assumptions of God. And so just over and over, trying and failing and getting angry and spiraling and then trying again, because God was actively pursuing me. There was no rest. There was no I'm just done, like I had done in the past. He didn't give me that break. He let me continue to try and to fail. Up until the point I remember coming home from church one day, sitting in the back pew, right, and seeing all the people that I felt like were perfect, and I wasn't, and my life was in shambles, and just literally yelling at God, where are you, and what are you doing, and God just spoke to my heart so plainly and so clearly, and he said, I'm right here. The same place that I have always been, and I'm just waiting for you to take what I'm offering. And it was that confirmation in my heart that it changed me, because it made me realize that down every wrong road I had been, there had been God actively pursuing me. Every place that I had went that God wouldn't be accepted, everything that I had done where he couldn't participate, but yet still he came actively pursuing me. And every time I found myself in a pit of my own making, where I was just nasty and dirty, there he came to pull me out and to clean me up and to set me on my feet, just so that I could have the choice to go back out and do it again, and he would follow me again, until it stuck, until like he was able to do the change in me and bring wholeness into my life. Now, it didn't mean that I was perfect, and it didn't mean that I was exempt from continuing to make bad choices and have hardships, but it meant that I knew who my God was, and I knew that he was willing to come for me and that he was on my side. And when he says, I fight your battles for you, like, he means it. He really does. He comes in and he fights our battles. And sometimes the battle is against us because we're fighting him. And he's willing to do that. He's willing to be the bad guy. He's willing, or at least in our eyes, and he's willing to do the hard work because he loves us so much. And I think, I still can't grasp the fullness of God's love sometimes, but I understand that he pursues us. And it has been so life-changing for me. And I hope that it's life-changing for you. I want you to, think back. Where are some of the places that you've been? What are some of the things that you've done? And just know that if the voice in your head is saying you've went too far, God would never accept you, even if you wanted him. And maybe some of you are saying, I really don't. But just know that if you did, you haven't went too far. He loves you. And as long as there's breath in your lungs, he's pursuing you. And he's so, that love that we talked about that makes him, hopeful, even though he knows the truth, keeps him pursuing you, even if in the end you don't choose. If in the end your whole world falls apart and you're met with, I don't know you, it won't be because of God. It won't be because he cut you off or said you went too far. It'll be because you continually stiff-armed God, because he wants you. There's not one person on this world that God doesn't want. I mean, wrap your minds around this. The Ted Bundys of the world, the Hitlers of the world, like, God wanted them. And if there is anything in them that where their hearts turned and they wanted God, you'll be seated next to them at the table in heaven, because nothing we can do can separate us from the love of God, and nothing that we do will keep him from coming after us so that we can experience him. And again, that is life-changing. And I hope that it's life-changing for you. All right, I got to get out of here because I'm late for work. And I hope that you'll have a wonderful week. And I'll be back hopefully next week. Have a great day.